We now present to you Aia from Sakhnin for a fascinating look into her work with HIAS in Ecuador.
Imagine that you found yourself in a strange country where you were unable to communicate outside of your family, unable to find a job and school for your children. I spent half a year working in Ecuador with Arab refugees who fled in hope of finding a new life, escaping a violent conflict. These refugees found themselves foreigners in a land where nobody knew them, nobody spoke their language, and lived to an entirely different culture. Being a Palestinian, where many of my people have been and still are refugees around the world, made me more empathetic to their plight. My name is Aia Khalily. I was born and raised in Sakhnin, a small town 2 hours from Jerusalem. I entered the HIAS, an American Jewish organization that provides humanitarian aid and assistance to refugees around the world. In their mission in Ecuador, I was tasked to work with Arab refugees coming from different countries, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. Before going there, I thought that I knew what a refugee would look like. I imagined someone vulnerable, someone helpless, uneducated, and untalented. But this experience turned my preconceptions upside down. Throughout my time there, I witnessed and heard the numerous challenges faced by refugees. Integration into the local community is particularly difficult due to the lack of communication and understanding between the locals and the community. This lack of interaction prevents the refugees from finding jobs and assimilating effectively into the new community. Today, I want to share with you 2 stories of women I met. Meet Manal. Manal arrived in Ecuador half a year ago, and she shared with me that communication was one of the main challenges that she faced. Manal has a baby, and one day she was at the hospital, and she didn't know even a word of Spanish, but she had to explain to the doctor that her baby has a diarrhea. Describing this problem, she used the sign language. And take only 1 second to imagine how this conversation might have looked like. The other woman that I want to introduce you to is Hasna. Hasna was one of the first refugees arriving in Ecuador together with her child and husband. I immediately felt a connection to her. And contrary to the stereotype that I have created to myself, Hasna was an educated and capable woman. She earned a bachelor's degree in architecture, she speaks 3 languages, and she had a successful job in Syria before her house was torn apart because of the civil war. However, arriving in Ecuador, Hasna found herself unable to find an appropriate job. I don't forget the moment that Hasna shared with me that she was saving money for 3 years in order to buy her 5-year-old child a bicycle. Throughout my time there, I worked with an amazing group of motivated women to lead a project that aimed to bridge between the local community and the refugees. This project is called Layla, where the women cook vegan Arabic food in a restaurant. I organized events with restaurants to create a platform for the women where they can sell their food, share their culture and their stories, including the history, the journey to Ecuador, and the challenges they face today. This project has an impact in both the local community and the refugees. The women feel today that they are more powerful, welcomed, and supported. And this interaction, as insignificant as it might sound to you, can change the whole refugee's life. And while for the locals, it has opened their eyes to the difficulties faced by the people living next to them, as well as to the wonderful, amazing cultural richness that these refugees have brought to their countries. In our brutal world, each one of us might end up one day to be a refugee. And many of us have families that have already been. Despite this, we harbor a lot of negative stereotypes against this community. We create barriers before dialogues. We create closure before openness and worries before welcomes. As individuals, we might not have the power to stop wars and not even change the governments, but what each one of us can do is to challenge our preconceptions, to open our hearts, and to welcome the refugees. Thank you.